Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Environment Matters. My name is Ladonna Kissoon, and I will be your moderator. So, on our last episode, we were privileged enough to have some young and enthusiastic students from the Marion Academy Environmental Club. And during that episode, they shared their passion for the environment and their knowledge as agents. In addition to that, we also had a conversation with them on the impending ban for single use plastics that is expected to take effect come 2021. So we're trying to follow up on that discussion, and with me today, I have two of my colleagues from the Environmental Protection Agency, Mr. Saeed Hamid, our legal officer, and Ms. Lauren Sampson, our legal assistant. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Excited to be here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so I want to get straight into all that's happening with regards to the ban on single-use plastics. Now, I know one of the questions a lot of people are asking is, why has Guyana decided to actually go this route? So why is it that we're going the route of banning single-use plastics?
So I think what you have to consider is the life cycle of plastics. For example, plastics are petroleum-based to begin with. While they might be easy to access, convenient, widely accessible, they're lightweight, they're cheap, affordable. We find plastic everywhere we go. But there are also some problems associated with plastics. For example, plastics takes hundreds of years to degrade. They are not easily recyclable. They don't, and even when they do degrade, they degrade into microplastics, which is a whole other problem. When you have microplastics and they end up in the marine environment, fish eat the microplastics and we eat the fish. So humans actually consume microplastics and we don't even know. There's a study by the World Economic Forum that says that if we continue at this rate of plastic pollution, by 2050 there'll be more plastic than fish in the ocean. So these are it's a difficult time for plastic waste and being able to manage plastic waste in countries. So you'll find like countries such as Barbados, one of our Caribbean sisters, has already implemented a similar single-use plastic ban. Countries like Kenya, countries like Australia, they all have different variations of the single-use plastic ban. So I think Guyana is now doing its part to try to regulate plastic waste in country, and a good start in that regard is the single-use plastic ban.
So there you go. It's not just Guyana that's actually going this route, but you have other countries around the world that is also actually putting systems like this in place. And the emphasis is also there with regards to, there's not just a life cycle for animals, but there's also a whole life cycle that includes plastics.
Definitely.
So yes, that's one thing to note. I know another frequently asked question is with regards to how exactly have we defined what single-use plastic is to mean?
Yes. So typically single-use plastic products are manufactured for one-time use and thereafter you intend to discard them. But even though you discard them, like Said said, they're not easily disposable. So because they're environmentally persistent, as well as the fact that they have a low recycling potential, and because of their compositions being that they're made up of polyethylene or polypropylene, these items are typically termed single-use plastic products.
All right, so what would be the main goal of actually going the route of banning these single-use plastic products?
The main goal is to ensure that there is a regulation of the production and use of plastic products, thereby targeting or ensuring that there is a reduction in the amount of plastic that ends up into our landfills and the environment. And if that is done, then naturally we would have a cleaner, safer environment, and hopefully it will also encourage people to adopt more eco-friendly and sustainable practices.
Great. So we are definitely looking to ensure that we have a cleaner environment when we go the route of banning all these single-use plastics.
Yeah.
All right. So what are we banning? Like, what are the items that we're looking to completely take away with regards to single use?
So yeah, that's a very popular question we get as well. I think just to begin with, it's important to note that the items that we propose to ban are based on our consultations. So we're going to be consulting with businesses and the public to try to get an understanding of where they are and how we should approach the ban. But the items that we're proposing right now are the plastic carrier bags. So the bags that you get every day when you go to the supermarket or the market, the regular plastic bags with the handles. We're proposing the ban on the plastic carrier bags, plastic straws, plastic cups, plastic plates, and utensils, forks, knives, spoons, as well as certain plastic food containers.
All right, so I have one question. So, what is going to happen with regards to like food storage? You know, you go to the supermarket, so you have meat or you have vegetables, but they're packed in this plastic, or you go and you get a syringe. The syringe comes in a plastic, and that's really a one-time use piece of plastic. So, what's going to happen with those items?
So that's a good question as well. So what we're doing is we're providing exceptions for certain areas such as scientific research, preservation of food, pharmaceuticals, disposal of garbage. So there are certain exceptions that we're looking into for excluding the targets.
So, how would we now go about determining what single use plastic product or item is to be banned?
Yeah, so for the proposed items that we have listed, we have considered the visibility of the items in the environment, meaning how common they are, how much they are used or how persistently they are used. We've also considered if they can be recycled and if there are viable alternatives for those products to determine if they can be included as items to be banned. We've also been conducting surveys to do statistical analysis to determine what items can be included even though they're on the proposed list, or how it is that we're going to approach them if we can't ban them right away. And we've also been getting feedback from stakeholders. We have a large, wide cross-section of society that we're currently targeting to determine what challenges they might experience with the items that we are proposing to be banned, and this better helps us to design the bill or the ban in a way that ensures that it's implemented successfully.
So we definitely have a plan. We have a plan, and a strategic one to be exact, about how we're gonna go about doing this. So I have one big question though. So we know plastic bottles are an issue, and that is definitely considered as a single-use product. So what plans do we have with regards to these plastic bottles?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So so as Lauren would have mentioned, we try to target the most complex single-use plastics, and naturally at the top of that list is going to be the PET bottles, the plastic bottles that are used all across Guyana in every single shop, every beverage provider. They're all using the plastic bottles. So what we've come to realize is a lot more research will be needed to target the plastic bottles. We found that, for example, the consumers are not ready for that transition yet because there are not that very many alternatives in country to make that transition. If we don't use the single-use plastic bottles, then we have to use glass bottles, for example. But we know that the beverage industries have phased out that approach or have moved away from glass bottles. So we're thinking in terms of a long-term planning for this single-use plastic ban. The larger vision would be to target the plastic bottles if we can get recycling plants, for example, for plastic bottles. So right now for the short term, we're looking at the other items I would have told you about. But in terms of the plastic bottles, we're still gathering research and trying to engage the stakeholders and the businesses particularly the beverage industry, to try to understand how they feel about transitioning away from single-use plastic bottles, or if we can talk about recycling plants for the plastic bottles.
So that's definitely a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a matter of just waiting to see as time progresses, and as we do the research and get the information, what's going to happen. So as it is right now, the plastic bottles are not part of the ban right now.
Right now, no.
Okay. All right. Lauren, you made mention with regards to having these stakeholder consultations, trying to encourage persons and better, provide education and awareness with regards to the single-use plastic ban. What else really goes into preparing a country, a nation, at far regarding the implementation of the ban?
Yes, so like you said, we do have a plan of the agency. We are currently, like I said, conducting consultations across the 10 administrative regions, so we have nationwide consultations. We have also developed a task force that targets persons who might help us in the implementation of the ban, or agencies that might help us in the enforcement stage of the ban. But aside from that, we also have research, which the surveys or questionnaires that we've been conducting nationwide in the consultations would feed into the statistical analysis that I spoke about earlier. We also have the drafting of the bill, which our department, the legal department at the EPA, will be working towards in conjunction with the Ministry of Legal Affairs. We also have financial mechanisms. Like Saeed was saying, there are persons or businesses that would have to either transition away from using plastic products or transition towards more alternatives. So we're working with agencies that are responsible for whether it's taxation or tax exemptions or tax incentives to ensure that financial mechanisms are in place so that alternatives can be manufactured locally or imported. We're also looking towards development of standards. We have been working with the Guyana National Bureau of Standards in that regard. So we're working to have national standards locally to determine what alternatives will be acceptable, and for the plastic items that are not being considered, what standards could be applied to them to ensure that they're not of a single use, or to ensure that they're labeled correctly. Thereafter, we'll work towards the drafting of the bill after all of this information and all of these steps have been considered. Our legal department will be working towards that, and once the bill has been developed and enacted, enforcement and monitoring is important, and we'll be working with other government agencies such as the Guyana Revenue Authority, which manages ports, to ensure that it's successfully enforced and monitored.
So the agency has been very busy. Clearly we've been very busy. So one other big question: when will this ban take effect?
So naturally, when we were designing the ban, we designed an action plan for the year, because we were looking at January 2021. So our action plan naturally consisted of the consultations that Lauren and I both spoke about. The consultations were expected to last from January to June. Then we would have worked on using that information and the data that we acquired to design the bill. Then we should submit the bill to Legal Affairs, and they'll do their process and do their public consultations as well. And then the bill is submitted to become regulations. So we were hoping for a January rollout period. Problem with that now is COVID-19, the coronavirus, the pandemic in our hands, has led to a lot of delays in that action plan. So we're currently reassessing our approach, redesigning the way we're going to do consultations. We know inevitably we have to do the consultation, so it's going to push that timeline. We don't know yet when that date is going to be though. So we're still waiting to assess the situation, like most people are, to understand better where Guyana is with COVID-19 and where national issues are.
Alright, so with all that's happening, there isn't a defined date, but there's a defined year.
Yes.
So we're definitely looking forward to 2021 to have the implementation of the ban on single-use plastics.
And it's also important to note too that the in doing the consultations, it's what designs the ban and what tells us if Guyana is ready for the ban. So if we do the consultations with businesses, for example, we find we don't have a lot of alternatives to feed the consumer market for businesses to be able to carry out their services efficiently, then we can't bring it out as soon as we want to. We might have to give time for the market to develop alternatives. So largely the consultations is what determines the timeline of the ban.
Okay, all right. So we're definitely there's definitely need for the consultations to continue in order to carry out this full implementation. Okay, all right. So we've talked a little about the agency's role with regards to this ban, but is there like a clear definition of the part that the Environmental Protection Agency is playing through the implementation of this ban?
So, like I mentioned before, with plastic waste, it's a huge problem for the environment. It ends up in the marine environment. It affects marine life. It affects our drainage. Plastics, when heated, they release toxins that can cause cancer. When we consume the fish that have the microplastic, we are consuming the microplastics. So largely, there are effects on the environment and human health. So the agency, by virtue of the Environmental Protection Act, is empowered to make regulations that would help to improve and conserve and protect the environment. So largely it's in this vein that the agency is responsible for drafting the regulations that we would submit to legal affairs so that we can try to move the process along and get the single-use plastic ban implemented. So that is the role of the agency in relation to its broad mandate of improving and protecting the environment.
Okay, great. And you've also spoke a little bit about other organizations or other agencies being involved in this process. Let's talk a little bit about who exactly is a part of it.
Yeah, so of course, even though it's our role to prevent and control pollution in Guyana, it is not something that we can do in a bubble or by ourselves. So we have recognized that in order to successfully implement this ban, it's going to take an integrated or collaborative approach. And like I mentioned earlier, we have formulated a multi-stakeholder task force with key agencies that we think can assist us in the implementation of the ban or the enforcement of the ban. So the agency has reached out to Ministry of Business, Ghana Revenue Authority, Ministry of Legal Affairs, Ministry of Finance, just to name a few, and we have drafted a terms of reference to guide the task force to ensure that members of the task force know what their responsibilities are. For example, GNBS is also in the task force. Like I said earlier, they will be helping us develop standards. Ministry of Finance will help us with the financial incentives. GRA would help us with the monitoring and enforcement, and so on and so forth.
Great. So we all know who we are and we all have some part to play with regards to the not only just the implementation but also the enforcement of the ban. And we know that, when we get there, enforcement and monitoring is definitely going to be a very big thing, and it's going to have to be definitely a continuous process. So I'd like to take this opportunity actually to encourage the task force members to keep at it. The cause is definitely needed for our environment and for the health of all Guyanese. So I'll encourage you to just keep at it. Be patient. All right. So given that we have a defined timeline and we know exactly what it is that we're banning, let's say we have somebody that has stock on hand. What will happen when the ban comes into play? What's going to happen to the stock that person actually has sitting there in their warehouse or in the supermarket or in the store?
So that's a popular question with our business stakeholders. So what we found is we've decided that we would take a phased approach to the ban, where the implementation of the ban would start, but for example, the importation and continued manufacture would be the starting point. The use and distribution would continue for a phased approach, perhaps maybe 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, who knows. The problem is determining that period will be dependent on the consultations, like I mentioned earlier. The consultation that would guide us to let us know, okay, so when we put the ban in place, let's say we proceed with January 2021, and we found with our consultations, businesses would need roughly 8 months to phase out their stock. Then we'll give an 8 months grace period for the implementation of use and distribution of single-use plastics. So largely the consultations is what will determine that phased approach and how much time is needed in country. With the business stakeholders right now, we've actually been receiving feedback from some of them saying, well, we were going to stock up. Our stocks right now are going to last December 2020, but, should we buy more next year or should we stock up for a full year? So they're already cooperating with us, trying to understand, how much stock they should get and when the ban is going to take effect.
Great. So that means we've definitely been working with them, and If we haven't reached out to you as yet, don't have our heads for it. But there's nothing wrong with you reaching out to us, and letting us know your position, and we will be able to better advise and guide you along this process. So we can definitely take that as a consultation. So yes. So please, if we haven't reached out to you, please feel free to reach out to us. You could send us a message on Facebook or through Instagram. You could drop us a message or a email, eit.epaguyana@gmail.com, or call us. You can call any of our offices, our main office in Georgetown, or you could reach out to the office in Linden or in Berbice. Okay? All right. So we'll take a quick break and we will be right back.
Gosh,
Miss Sonia.
morning, Miss Cheryl. I'm late for work.
I noticed the other day y'all had a big campaign with them police officers, so shutting down them people barbecue, wedding, dance. Man, how y'all expect these people to make money and survive?
Oh, Miss Cheryl, that is far from the truth. The EPA and the Guyana Police Force are actually working together to ensure that persons who conduct certain businesses and activities are authorized. We've tried to allow them to adhere to the noise regulations.
Well, this gotta be a new law. What law is this?
These laws were always in place. It's now that we're getting all these complaints at the agency, we are trying to enforce them. The Environmental Protection Act has been in place since 1996, and it states that persons and businesses must apply for environmental authorization before operating a sound-making device.
Well, girl, I never know this thing is part of the law.
So if you're keeping a barbecue or an open-air function, like a wedding or a concert, especially in your community, right, and you're playing a music system, you have to apply for a short-term noise permit. And for persons that operate in a business and you got generators and stuff, you have to apply for a long-term permit. And that is applicable to bars and hotspots and clubs also.
Well, now that you explain it, I understand it. It's unfair to the elderly, sick people, and even them little children.
That is correct. According to the World Health Organization, loud noise can cause stress, sleep deprivation, and hearing impairment. And I'm sure you wouldn't want that.
Oh, now I understand. Thank you for explaining it, Miss Sonia.
For more information, you can contact the EPA at 225-5471 or visit our office at Ganji Street, North Sophia, Georgetown. From the gift of Iwakrama to the groundbreaking low-carbon development strategy, Guyana, the land of many waters, land of the giants, has been a leader on environmental management and biodiversity conservation in the Caribbean and on the world stage. Guyana is now embarking on a bold new path that places environment at the center of its development. Our country's Green State Development Strategy is our country's long-term development plan that seeks to reorient and diversify Guyana's economy, reducing reliance on traditional sectors and opening up new sustainable income and investment opportunities. The GSDS will provide the foundation for an inclusive green economy, which will result in improved human well-being and social equity while reducing environmental risks. In 2016, a bold move was made to ban styrofoam food containers through legislation and enforcement. We join the rest of the world in beating plastic pollution for World Environment Day and beyond.
Can you come around, please?
Morning. My name is Deborah. I just want to get some information.
Good morning. I am Odessa Duncan, Senior Environmental Officer. How may I assist you today?
Tell me something. They got this man next door by me breaking on this big building, and it's bare asbestos in the roof. I could remember hearing on your TV program that asbestos is dangerous to human health and the environment.
This is correct. The Environmental Protection Act states that any person or facility that is storing, treating, transporting, and or disposing of hazardous waste material must be authorized by the EPA to do so.
Oh, but it's now I'm really hearing about this hazardous waste thing. Tell me something more.
Hazardous waste are waste material with properties that are dangerous or capable of having a harmful effect on human health and the environment, including things like paint, fertilizers, and pesticides, waste oil, and asbestos. These things have the potential to cause cancer, birth defects, kidney failure, and reproductive impairment, with children being at the highest risk. The environmental authorization in this case gives the legal right to transport, store, and dispose of this material in accordance with the EP Act Chapter 2005 Laws of Guyana. Now, this ensures you and your operation and your process is safe for the environment and human health.
So you mean to tell me that all them leftover Christmas paint that I got on in my kitchen sink, I need authorization from EPA to get rid of it?
No, Miss Deborah. These items, once used for household purposes, does not require environmental authorization from the EPA. However, you should still take necessary steps to ensure that these materials are stored and disposed of in an environmentally safe manner.
Thank you so much for the information. I go in and tell him that he needs an environmental authorization. Thank you.
Thank you for staying with us, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. Again, my name is Ladonna Kissoon, and I'm your moderator for today. And joining me are two of my colleagues from the Environmental Protection Agency, Mr. Saeed Hamid, our legal officer, and Ms. Lauren Sampson, our legal assistant. And we have been talking about single-use plastics and the impending ban that is scheduled for 2021. Correct. We know all that's being banned, we know when we're banning it and all of that, but what I would like to know, and I'm sure Guyana at large, is what are the alternatives to the items that we're proposing to ban? I notice you guys have a display here of items. I noticed bamboo utensils, there's paper bag, and I think this is canvas. Yes, so what alternatives are out there and available to us?
Before I get into what is on the table, I will speak about what alternatives are available out there to us. So, generally, alternatives are available for bags. You have cloth bags or bags that are made from natural fibers or bags that are made from reusable or biodegradable materials. There are bio bags that are similar to plastic, but they actually degrade and unlike plastic and not into microplastics. There are straws. There are alternatives for the straws as well. There are paper straws, cardboard straws, glass straws, metal straws. There are considerations about the cardboard straws because sometimes they tend to get soggy. So we are looking into making sure that the alternatives that we recommend are fit for purpose, are of similar quality to the plastic straws that are available. Right here on the table we have a bamboo straw, which is reusable, but we're recommending it for individual use as opposed to the way that plastic straws are manufactured or given. Even though it's reusable, we don't want it to be a case where restaurants use them. it's not for multiple persons to use, just one person. We also have alternatives for food containers. So they're biodegradable food containers, which you may have seen as you go around shopping. They're cardboard cups or paper cups, which you may have seen, or reusable ones made of sturdier plastic or glass or metal. You have the handy dandy mason jars that everybody seems to love lately.
Including me.
Yes. As it relates to the bags, I think I've covered that they're paper bags and the canvas bags and stuff. So there are alternatives that are available.
So, yes, there are alternatives available, but how readily available are they to Guyanese or Guyana at large?
So the issue that we're currently having is that in country currently all we have are on a large scale are the biodegradable containers and the paper cups. There are persons that are bringing in paper bags, but they're limited stock, and it's just based on the demand of their customers, so they're not nearly ready for a complete transition to away from plastic bags or to supply all 10 administrative regions in the event of the ban or when the ban takes effect. So we are aware also of persons who are manufacturing, but a lot of them are only starting up. So the agency is looking towards sourcing alternatives regionally and outside of the region, as well as trying to encourage persons to innovate and look for ways to manufacture products locally, even if it is using material from a tree that is available locally. We're trying to encourage that as much as possible, but we understand that people may need capital to do so. So we're working with Ministry of Business and other stakeholders to look for ways to provide incentives or support for persons to do the transition or the manufacturing of alternatives.
Okay, so we have alternatives available,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them are available in country as we speak right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it's good to know that we're actually working along with these businesses to ensure that these alternative items are made available when the ban comes into play. Now, from a business perspective, what is going to happen? Will these alternatives cost more than the actual single-use plastics that we have right now? What systems are there to ensure currently that we don't actually face an issue like this?
So largely that's a decision. That's a question based on a lot of economic variables. So as Lauren would have mentioned, we did find that there are a few suppliers locally that are supplying the alternatives that you would have mentioned. They might be a little more pricier. Problem with that though is when you have very niche suppliers, then like for a niche market, you're gonna find prices are gonna be a little more expensive. But then when we're transitioning towards the ban now and there'll be multiple suppliers, they're gonna have to compete, which means their prices are gonna be more competitive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one factor to consider. Second factor to consider is the production and manufacture locally. What we found is a lot of the people who are supplying right now in Guyana are importing from other countries far as wide as Asia. So we found that all of those costs are what factor into their decision making for the pricing. So we found that pushing for local development of alternatives will help with the cost factor. So a large part of what we're doing with the consultations right now is trying to encourage as much financial incentives as we can to push local development and local capacity. So an important point to note on this to this end is I remember in Region 9, I think you were with me, Ladonna, when we went to do our consultations in Region 9. And a lot of the persons at the consultation, they were like, this is nothing new to us, that, we take our market bag and we put everything inside. We take our market bag to the grocery stores.
Yes.
We don't use the plastic bags, we don't reuse them, they're in the drains. This is not our way of life. So we found that like people were like, this was cultural back in the day. Plastic bags were just a new thing. We used to take our market bags all the time to the supermarkets and the grocery stores. So I think too, what we need to understand as well, despite the economic factors, if persons reuse like the woven bags or the market bags, or they reuse their enamel bowls or glass bowls instead of the alternatives, pushing reuse will aid in the decision making for the economics as well, because you're not going to be spending as much either. So it's a two-pronged approach. Pushing and advocating for the reuse of reusable products, as well as understanding the economic factors to push local development and local capacity to develop alternatives.
Yes, I remember when we were in Region 9, I found it really surprising that persons actually still had those baskets, the back in the days. Well, I can speak on probably my great grandmother's behalf. She used to go to market with the actual basket in hand, and at the top picking out would be the vegetables or the fruits. And so it was really interesting to see that was still a way of life for the persons in Region 9. And the fact that they were making their own bags, that was really interesting too.
And additionally, what we found too is a lot of the products, the alternatives, the raw materials to make these things can all be found in Guyana.
Yes.
All of it can be found in Guyana, so we don't need to be sourcing it from Thailand and Vietnam and wherever else. Like, we can get all the raw materials right here in country if we can push for the development of these alternatives. I believe last month we had an NGO consultation with all the NGOs with environmental mandates, and one of them said that there's an Amerindian community close to Iwakram, I believe, that is developing their own type of cotton woven bags for reusable purposes. So we have the drive in country, we have the capacity to do it, but I think it's important to push and advocate for that financial incentive. The capital to develop that capacity is much needed.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, Saeed. So I actually have two follow-up questions for that. So with all of this drive and being, Guyana being able to foster development following this ban, what measures are being put in place to assist the business community that will be majorly affected? I know during the consultations with the supermarkets, as much as they were in mind that, okay, we're going to ban these bags, we're going to have to find alternatives for them, but I'm sure we will not get the same feedback or reception from, let's say, the market vendor who really rely on these single-use plastic bags to sell their product. So what measures will be put in place for this?
I think what you've touched on there it goes to the heart of why public awareness is important and communications is important, because more often than not, you don't go to the market on a whim. You plan, you say, Friday I'm going to the market, Sunday I'm going to the market.
I do.
Really?
I
Okay,
do. That's really terrible of me, but I do.
So, even when, let's say you plan your market day and you take your reusable market bag, you take your woven bag, your basket, as your great grandmother was using, you take the basket and you put your produce in there as you're buying and take it home. If you don't do that now, we have these. Take your paper bags, you put your produce, your apples, your bora, your shallot, and you take it home. So it goes back to the readily availability of the alternatives, making it accessible to all Guyanese and making sure it's affordable. So that's why we want to push for the economic incentives. We want to push local development. We want to make sure that we're not burdening the consumer, and that's an important part of this ban, because that will be counterproductive, because people will not want to adhere to the ban, and then we're going to have trouble.
So as much as I'm never really a planner where markets is concerned, and it's really bad for me. But one thing I do follow is that in the trunk of my car, I have all these bags. So every time the maker has to go to clean, I'm like, okay, I need to take these bags out, because when I do shop, I try to ensure that I have a bag in the car that I could take to the market or to the grocery store, wherever. But just to ensure that there's always a bag in the car. When there isn't a bag in the car, I usually fetch the rug in my hand. Which, it's kind of terrible on me, but still, I know there are other persons out there that are like me, and just in a spur of a moment decide, oh, I want a pug or something from the market, and we just go along our merry way. And I know there are reusable bags too that are really neat, so they fold up really nicely, and you could you know, in your bag or your back pocket,
Your
wherever.
pocket,
And, you know, we could go about normal life. Nothing is wrong with that, you know. All right. So like I said, I had two questions on that. So we've already touched with regards to the business community, but what incentive will there be, or what incentive will be created for persons that would like to manufacture biodegradable products in Guyana? How exactly are we going to be able to foster those business developments?
So I believe I did touch on this a little bit earlier. It's a work in progress for us. We are reaching out to ministries such as the Ministry of Finance, and we will be working towards putting systems in place to incentivize that.
Okay.
So if you are a business or person that's interested in manufacturing alternatives locally or biodegradable materials locally, you should make contact with the EPA at any of our offices, or Gandhi Street office, Burgess office, or Linden office. Or contact information is available on our website, epaguyana.org.
So I don't want you to knock me for this, but I know other persons might have had the same experience that I did. I know with the alternatives that are available, what would happen, or is there anything in place for testing of quality and standard? Because we know some of the alternatives are not so strong. You know, you go shopping and the bag, reusable bag that you have, and ploops, the strap bursts, and all your groceries on the floor, you're just standing there. So is there any system in place to ensure that the alternatives that we're getting are going to be of good quality and standard?
Yes, it is important to the agency that the alternatives that we recommend are fit for purpose and are of a good quality. Obviously, you can't do too much with the paper bags. You just have to be conscious about what you're going to put in the paper bags. Not good for wet stuff. But other than that, we'll be working with the Guyana National Bureau of Standards to develop national standards for alternative products to ensure that they're of good quality, that they're safe for use. If it's a spoon, that it's good for you to eat your food with, and just all along ensuring that the quality of the product is good.
Great. So who would like to share with me in detail the work that the agency has been putting in so far regarding this ban?
I think we can share that one. With regards to the work we've been doing, I believe we started a more rigorous consultation process last September, I believe, and that was the Region 9 consultation that we did together.
Yes.
We started in September, and then we did Linden, and then we've been trying to do regions, each region every month since.
We've also did Region 1.
Region 1 as well earlier this year, yes. So we're doing the regional consultations, and when we go to the regions, we meet with the business stakeholders, we meet with the members of the public, we meet with NGOs if there are any. So we try to bring everyone to the fold so we can understand their concerns. So a large part of what I mentioned before with the action plan is from January to June, the plan back then was to do consultations in every region and do consultations with the relevant stakeholders, the businesses and agencies too. We found like the agencies are very important with the task force that Lauren was talking about that we set up. GRA is extremely important, and fun fact, GRA actually provides tax exemptions to persons bringing in biodegradable alternatives. So if you want to bring in some of the alternatives that we have here, like the paper bags, the biodegradable cutlery, paper cups, paper plates, you can go to GRA and get exemptions for those. So we found that was an important result that we got out of interfacing with these agencies as well. So there are a lot of different pockets of stakeholders that we think are very important to this process. So that's what we've been embarking on over the past few months. And like I said before, with COVID-19 and coronavirus, the pandemic on our hands, we're trying to reassess our approach and amend the way we are going to do the consultations right now. Because it's the consultations that will help inform our decisions on how we move forward with the ban, how to design the ban, and what are the timelines for the ban.
Alright. Would you have anything else to share, Lauren?
Well, there are some categories of stakeholders that we haven't touched as yet, such as persons in the tourism sector, which contributes heavily to plastic pollution. No shade to them. But aside from the tourism sector, We haven't touched the market vendors, as you said earlier, and we still have to do consultations with members of the public in other regions. But like Saeed said, with the COVID-19 situation, we're currently working on reassessing our approach to this. Thus far, we've done so as it relates to our task force meetings. We've had virtual meetings so far. We've had internal meetings virtually as well, but we're not quite sure how that's going to work for a larger group of stakeholders, but we're looking into our options for that.
And I'm glad that you actually mentioned virtual meetings. So I'd like to take this opportunity to encourage you guys to check our Facebook page and check us out on Instagram. You'll see a lot of information regarding the impending ban on single-use plastics. So if you missed anything that we've spoken about thus far, please do check our social media pages on Facebook or on Instagram, and you can also find some information for reading, or if you want to watch a nice little snippet of a video or so, you can also check our website. That's EPA Guyana. So moving along, how has the response been from our stakeholders? You know, you did mention, Lauren, that we have categories of stakeholders. For the ones that we would have interfaced with, you know, thus far during this process, what would you say have been their response to the impending ban on SUPs, or better known as single-use plastics?
So what we found so far is a lot of the concern is rooted in ensuring that we have the alternatives, and the alternatives are fit for purpose, and they're cheap. I think that's if you were to boil everyone's concerns down, that's what it comes down to. I don't think we're getting much resistance to transition our economy and to transition our conduct and culture in Guyana towards this alternatives to the single-use plastics. We haven't received much resistance in that regard. It's just about people wanting the information. They want to know that we have sufficient alternatives, we have efficient alternatives, and they're not going to break their pockets and wallets trying to get these alternatives. So it's about changing the consumer market without changing the consumer market, if you will. So what we found is that's the major concern, and it goes back to the heart of public awareness and communications as well. If you have a very effective strategy to communicate the issues with plastic waste that we face, and I'm just going to reiterate them really quick because plastic waste is extremely important and problematic. It's part of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, for example, to minimize your plastic pollution and plastic waste. You find whales, turtles are all consuming plastic, so our marine environment is affected. We eat fish. Once again, you have your microplastics, so you have not fish and chips, fish and plastic. So there are a lot of concerns about plastic waste, and a lot of concerns for the Guyanese should be concerned with, because this is an opportunity for us to join other countries, a global effort to minimize plastic waste and to prevent any kind of negative impacts on the marine environment and our human health and safety as well.
Yes, definitely. So just remember, folks, that you have your bit to do to not only preserve the environment, but to also preserve your own health. You know, a lot of the plastics, I think it was WHO that said 80% of the plastic actually ends up back into our waterways. So, you know, the effect that it has not only on our marine life, but also that it can definitely cause lots of environmental problems. And we really don't want to have to relive 2005. Yes, we really don't want to have another episode of that. So, you know, we have our little bit to do with regards to, you know, getting rid of these single-use plastics.
No, I was actually reading up on some more over the weekend, and I found that there's a new study that suggests that the amount of plastic waste in the ocean could actually make its own continent of Europe.
Yes, I think I've actually seen a little snippet of something like that. Yes, so yeah, there, you know, it's not just something that's really bothering to Guyana, but you know, a lot of other countries actually face this problem, and it's because of the fact, you know, that there's no proper solid waste management systems in place. I know even though for like the US they have recycling plants, And I know I was watching, I think it was BBC News, and they were saying that even though there's a recycling plant, a lot of the materials that come to the plant is not really recyclable. So it ended up going into the dump site, and then there is no system there for the degradation of those plastic items. So we're really not trying to have that situation here in Guyana. All right. So we have a small video for you guys. So I do hope that you enjoy this. So we'll be right back.
Hey there! Welcome to Life Noggin. The other day, I decided to be a good roommate and gathered up some trash to get rid of in my apartment. All those extra bits of code that my animator creates can really add up. We don't have to worry about landfills or the effects that waste has on the environment here in the digital world, but the trash you create in your human world can really add up to some pretty bad consequences, especially with plastic. But why is plastic so bad? Well, to begin our journey, let's take a trip to one of your earthly landfills. Plastic can take up to 1,000 years to break down, and it also has the potential to leak harmful pollutants into the soil. The chemical components of plastic can be absorbed by humans and may lead to negative health effects. Not only that, but plastic production uses up a large amount of our fossil fuels. A report based off of 2008 data found that the amount of chemical energy contained in the millions of tons of plastic in US landfills was equal to about 37 million tons of coal or 139 million barrels of oil. And that was 9 years ago. So plastic is bad for the turf. But what about the surf? If you take a look at the waters of the world, you'll find that plastic pollution can really wreak havoc on the oceanic ecosystem. Nobody knows this more than our sea turtle friends, where the majority of their population will be injured or killed by plastics in their lifetime. Not only that, but plastic is often found blocking their breathing passages and stomachs, along with doing the same to countless other marine species, such as dolphins and whales. Plastic can also break down in the ocean into small particles the size of plankton. These little pieces collect toxins like DDT and PCBs at levels up to 1 million times the levels found in seawater. These toxins then enter the food chain when any aquatic life accidentally ingests the plastic. It might even make its way to you the next time you go to a seafood buffet. Trash and plastic in the ocean goes further down the rabbit hole of doom by threatening biodiversity. Plastic debris can serve as floating transportations to foreign and alien species, allowing them to hitchhike to new and unfamiliar parts of the world. This is common with barnacles and algae. These new invasive species can become detrimental to the local ecosystem. I don't know about you, but The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Ocean sounds like a pretty trashy prequel to me. So what can you do to help? While it will certainly take a global effort to counter the negative effects of plastic waste, you can still be a part of the change. You can start by picking greener options when you get the chance, like bringing your own reusable bags to the grocery store. Many different types of plastic are also now recyclable, so make sure you recycle when you can and not throw them in the trash or let them litter your beautiful planet. Your friendly neighborhood blocko is on the job, but you gotta do this in your human world too. Let us know in the comment section below what we should talk about next. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of talk about the bees dying at an alarming rate. But what would actually happen if they all died? To find out the answer, check out this video. So what happens without any bees? Well, to start, remember all the food items I mentioned earlier, they're gone. And with the disappearance comes a monetary loss of over $14 billion in the United States alone. As always, I'm Blocko. This has been Life Noggin. Don't forget to keep on thinking.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you're now joining us, welcome to The Environment Matters. My name is Ladonna Kissoon, and I've been your moderator thus far for the show. And with me, I have two of my colleagues from the Environmental Protection Agency, Mr. Saeed Hamid, our legal officer, and Ms. Lauren Sampson, our legal assistant. And we have been talking about the impending ban on single-use plastics. So one of my questions is, what is going to happen to persons that are found smuggling single-use plastic or the items that have been listed? What's going to happen to them if we do find them?
Yes, so in 2015, as you know, the government of Guyana and the Environmental Protection Agency enacted the ban on styrofoam products through regulations under our act. And based on our lessons learned from that process or the implementation of that ban, we know that it's definitely going to be an issue for us that persons will go into stockpiling mode, they panic and stockpile plastics, or that they will try to bring in plastic products after it has been banned. Part of that reason could be because they may be malicious, part of that reason could be because they may not be aware that plastic is being banned. So I think that in our approach to this, we might have to take a two-pronged approach. It would be that we would have to ensure that our public awareness is very rigorous and that people know that plastic is not to be imported, it's being banned. And as it relates to the enforcement and monitoring thereafter, there will be a monitoring and enforcement component in our bill or legislation that is being drafted for the ban on single-use plastics. And we will ensure that it will collaborate with the Guyana Revenue Authority. They are a major partner in the monitoring and enforcement of the styrofoam ban currently, and going forward they will also be our partner in the monitoring and enforcement of the ban on single-use plastics. So GRA has powers to impose fines and seize plastic products that have been imported illegally once the ban is implemented. And as it relates to stockpiling, we're working on a mechanism for that. We haven't settled on one as yet. We're considering a levy, but we're not sure about that. And as far as our enforcement powers in agency, we'll work towards also having a power of seizure as well. And ultimately, when all of that is done, the stockpile products or the seized products would have to be disposed of. So a waste management component is going to be very crucial to guide us or guide persons in how to properly dispose of the contraband items.
Okay. Oh,
I was
sorry.
just going to add that during the consultations too, you have to also look at what other countries around the world are doing, and what we found too is some countries make it an offense for both the consumer and the supplier. So let's say you go to the supermarket or you go somewhere where there's the ban is in place, and you go and they give you a plastic bag, and that will be an offense under the bill, under the ban. But the consumer also accepting the plastic bag would also be an offense for that consumer, which is not usually done, and wasn't done with the styrofoam. But with this ban, we're going to perhaps consider that approach. So you accepting it, you're also subject to penalties under the draft bill as we see it right now.
Great. So I would take it that most of what's happening is actually being done in a simultaneous manner. I know, given the pandemic that we're facing right now with the COVID-19, that things would have been a little bit paused, but I am aware, and I'd like to encourage that, even for the sister agencies that are working along with us, that work still continues through this all. Alright, so I would like to put you guys on the spot. I did this with, I see Saeed giving me the eye here. I did this with the students from Marian Academy, who were, very vocal at the end. But I would like to find out from you guys, as officers of the EPA, and as Guyanese, what has been your phase of transitioning given this ban that's coming on board? If you like, I can start with mine. Like I said before, one of the things that I do right now is that I try to always have my reusable bag in the car, or even so on me when I go shopping, and I try my best not to take any plastic bags. I usually have to take them if I have like meat or anything that's like wet, so I can't exactly put it with my fresh products, but I'm gonna figure something out soon enough. And then straws. I go out with my family members, and I'm like, I don't want a straw. And they're usually like, it's Saturday, you don't need to be working. But the straws is one thing that I don't take anymore. And I have for a very long time, not been using a lot of the PET bottles. So I have my bottle at the agency, I have my bottle at home. So I usually take it out with me whenever I'm going anywhere. And I am a big user of my mason jars. I think quite a lot of persons who are, involved where my life is concerned know that I like mason jars. So I usually just, like, if we're, having a little family hang or whatever, I try not to use the plastic cups, but I have my mason jar. So yes, that's what I've been doing so far. So what about you, Saeed?
So I'm sensing like a cultural thing here with the mason jars. So I'm thinking in the business consultations, we should probably ask them to start bringing in more mason jars. Yeah,
maybe.
So like similar to you, I use my flask and my bottle as much as I can. I use my reusable bag at the grocery store. I refuse plastic bags sometimes and just carry them in my hands if I don't have the bag. So I do that. I refuse straws as well, much to the dismay of my family members, because when we were at dinner, I give all of them the glare when they're having the plastic straw still, and I'm like, shame on you, there's a turtle dying because of you. And then they feel guilty and return it. So that's the effective communication right there.
Yes, definitely.
Similar to Ladonna, actually. I do have impromptu shopping visits, so I do accumulate some bags because I need them for my garbage, and I haven't found cute little garbage bags that are suitable for my purposes. I just have these big ones that are too big for me. But if I to get the alternatives, I would be happy to use them and to do away completely with the shopping bag. But until then, I will need shopping bags every now and again, but I don't always use the shopping bags. I have my reusable bags, I have my reusable cups, bottles. I don't take straws when I go out. I ask for cup drinks instead of plastic bottle drinks. Sometimes people ask me, sometimes they don't, but generally I don't drink soda as much. I believe that I've gifted Mr. Hamid a straw. I've gifted some other colleagues straws too, but I don't have one for myself. I'm still supposed to get a bamboo straw for myself.
We're gonna have to look into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it. One of my major plastic products that I use, I'm a big consumer of plastic shower bottles. I tend to use liquid soaps. And I've transitioned to bar soaps that are pretty good as well, but I'm most proud of that one, transitioning to bar soaps.
So congratulations to you, Ms.
Yeah,
Lauren.
looking towards getting bamboo toothbrushes, eventually, trying as much as possible, even if it's not a single-use plastic product, to use something that is biodegradable or reusable.
Okay, great. So those same bottles that you use, with your shower gel or your shampoos and stuff, you can actually reuse those bottles. And I know, like with persons that do arts and crafts, maybe you can even check with like Borough School of Arts. These are items that persons would actually reuse, and you yourself could actually reuse
anybody
those
that
items.
wants to take my plastic bottles from me, they're welcome. But I don't know of anybody that takes plastic bottles, so I'm just trying to minimize my consumption as far as possible.
Well, there you go. If you're interested in having some plastic bottles, like the shampoo bottles or the body wash bottles, do make contact with us. We might not have as much to give away. I don't know how much Lauren actually generates from time to time, but let's see if we could get a few to you. All right. As we close off today, is there anything that you guys would like to share with us or leave with the general public?
All right. Well, if you were here with us throughout the whole segment, you'd find that our consultation process is very intensive, It involves a lot of stakeholders. It's a long-term process, and it's a very important part of the ban in terms of designing the bill and designing our approach and determining the timelines. So right now that's our focus. Our prime area is getting the consultations done as well as the communications. So we want to encourage as much persons out there who think they should be a part of that process to make contact with the agency so we could understand what their opinions are, whether you're members of the public, whether you're NGOs, whether you're from the tourism sector, whether you're businesses that supply or use the single-use plastics that we talked about, whether you think your input is important to us in this process, come through to us, communicate with us, contact us. And on that note, April 22nd is Single-Use Plastics Free Day. So I'm going to implore and give everyone the challenge of to go single-use plastics free for the entire day so that you can start climatizing yourself towards the ban, refuse the plastic bags, take your bags to the market, refuse the plastic straws. By then, I don't know if COVID-19 will still be a thing, so either way, if it is a thing, don't be out and about though. Try as much as you can to stay indoors, but if you are out, make sure you refuse the plastic straws and your plastic bags and do as much as you can to reduce your consumption of single-use plastic products.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so in addition to all of that, we also have, as a result of COVID-19, we've moved our poetry competition to our social media pages. So we intend to have a poetry competition this month, and we're encouraging persons to visit our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, on our website to get information about that. Yeah, I think that's it. I would just encourage members of the public to be safe and take care of their health and be mindful of others in this time, because just because it may not affect you doesn't mean that it may not affect someone else. And as it relates to environmental matters, it's kind of the same thing. Just because something that you're doing or some practice that you have might not affect you personally doesn't mean it's not affecting the fishes and other people in your surroundings or in another country. So we should be mindful of the things that we do.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Just remember that the ban on single-use plastics is going to take effect in 2021, and let's just recap the items that are going to be banned.
So we're proposing the plastic carrier bags, which is your basic supermarket bag. We're targeting plastic straws, plastic cups, plastic plates, certain plastic food containers, and plastic cutlery, forks, knives, spoons.
There you go. And there are also alternatives available. There are some displayed here, and you will see it on your screen as we conclude this episode of The Environment Matters. Again, check us out on social media. You can look for us on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can check us out even on YouTube or our website. I have been your moderator, Ladonna Kissoon, and from us here, Mr. Saeed Hamid and Ms. Lauren Sampson, we ask that you stay safe and be conscious of not only your environment, but also your health. So thank you for being with us. Until next time.